For Oceania. I am so excited to introduce Mirjana and Petra from North Macedonia to talk about accessibility with us. Thank you so much for being here. And afterwards, if there's time for questions, we'll do that. If not, definitely find them in the hallway. They're fascinating to talk to. But yeah, welcome.
Thank you very much for the lovely introduction. It is really a pleasure and an honor to be here with all of you at this really inspiring event. And it's going really crazy with everything so far. Hope you had a great day. So I'm Mirjana.
And I'm Petra.
And today we'd like to introduce you into our accessibility journey, how we stepped into it for the first time, but not as an experts who have figured out everything, but as a curious testers who have asked questions, who have made a lot of mistakes, those small moments of realization, and all those steps that helped us learning along the way. So, if you're unsure where to start, I think this is the right place to be, because we are going to share our real challenges, those small moments of realizations, as I previously mentioned, and all those steps that kept us moving further and further. Yes, thank you. But first, let's experience something. Try to scan the QR code, try to follow the instructions there, and see how far you'll go.
And you need to use your non-dominant hand to complete the task, not both of the hands.
And try not to use your dominant one, because it will be tempting. Yes, so how many of you have managed to finish it? The goal was actually not to be able to finish, to feel it hard, to make it difficult, to feel frustrated. Maybe it is not the best way to start a presentation, but hey, the discomfort that you have felt right now, this is something that some people are feeling every day when they are interacting with applications that are not accessible. And this is where accessibility starts.
I want to start with something personal. Inclusivity has always been important to me and something that I genuinely care about, not just in testing, but in how we build products and how we treat people. So why has accessibility testing feel so difficult for me, so distant for me for a very long time? I am not a person that have a disability, so I didn't know if what I am doing, what I am testing will matter in the end. And what helped me to achieve this is to I tried using different tools, but what actually helped me is a moment in my personal life that I didn't encounter. I was actually trying to make sourdough bread, and I had the recipe ready. I thought I was ready. Everything was prepared. All the guidelines were there, but then I needed to actually use my hands for the dough, and that's when I couldn't unlock my phone anymore. I tried using my nose, my knuckles, everything, but in the end nothing was working for me, and I realized that this is actually accessibility. This is what some people are experiencing, and I realized that it doesn't always have to be permanent. There are permanent disabilities, there are temporary disabilities, but there are also situational disabilities, something that happened to me, something that can happen to everyone. And that's when things started to shift from me. I stopped asking, does this work? And I started asking, will it still work when the conditions are not perfect?
And of course, naturally, we started to educate ourselves, started learning, reading, and quickly we realized that accessibility is not one rule or one tool. There is a whole bunch of, there are organizations like W3C, there are guidelines and standards like Web Content Accessibility Guideline, like laws, right? And believe me, there is a huge community behind this. And VCAG, Web Content Accessibility Guideline, this from version 2.1, 2.2, and there is 3.0 0 in preparation, which probably will change the conformance levels from 1A, AA, AAA to bronze, silver, and gold. And they're also encouraging us to use quantifiable and qualitative tests, and we are going to use these terminologies during our presentation. So all of this exists with one goal: to make products accessible and usable for everyone in everyday situations. And how can we absorb all of this information in our testing world? Well, guess what? We started to think in layers, right? We heard today also layers, and we thought of no more than 3 layers, nothing original here. So the first one is the structural, second one is interactive, and the last one is experiential. And each layer goes deeper from correctness to usability to the actual real experience. And during our presentation, we are going to use this example. It is a simple one-time password code authentication, which you probably have encountered while you logged in your banking app or try to do a transaction or some other app. So the code is requested. It's received via SMS or email. You need to enter the code into the input field. And if everything is OK, then
I cannot press.
Then, if everything is okay and the user clicks submit button, then everything will work and the flow will go on. So how and where do we start to test this? We start with the structural layer, where we asked ourselves, is this built correctly? Is everything under the hood correctly built and structured? And of course, this was the easiest way to start here because there are a plethora of tools, well-established tools that you can find on this link here, W3 page, where they can scan the code, they can parse the DOM, they can analyze the HTML structure, and they can validate it against all of those VCAG rules here. So, because the outcome of all of these tools is really measurable and deterministic, they can easily be integrated in our CI/CD pipeline, and we can easily find accessibility issues early in our development and continuously during our development life cycle. So the thing here is that because these are quantifiable, right, quantifiable tests, and deterministic, right, repeatable, they are validating things like the color contrast ratio, like if the area labels are correctly used or missing, and this can give us a good baseline for compliance and also give us a good confidence, but up to a point.
What do we actually test for in this layer, and how do we do it is something that we as testers are going to ask. A good way to start is to check if our application is meeting these VCAG requirements that Mirjana mentioned. And for example, there is a VCAG guideline regarding color contrast, specifically 4.5 to 1 minimal color contrast ratio. The reason for that is making the content accessible for users with visual impairments. So if we see this example here, do you think it is going to pass the minimal color contrast requirement? Or which fields pass or which fields don't? Let's see. This is an example of using Wave, and Wave is a browser extension that is performing live accessibility scans. And as you can see, Wave actually caught 4 of the fields that are not passing the requirement. And you can see here that the submit button was not flagged. It's because I intentionally made it just above that minimal contrast ratio requirement. And this is something that we cannot easily see and distinguish with our naked eye, but these tools, these scanning tools, are perfect for it because they are going to catch it, and they also catch things like missing or wrong labels, ARIA misuse, or any other structural issues.
And here, this is an example of an automated test where we built in the Axe Core and Pali tool, where you can see that each violation that these tools report is associated with a VCAG rule and with the DOM element that is violating this rule. So for example, AXScore has found the same 4 violations that also VCAC found, and you can see these are custom-made reports. You can, of course, we made them to highlight the DOM elements that are also violating and not correctly implemented, but you can see here PaliTool has found only 3 instead of these 4 violations. So even though usually these tools find the same amount of things, it is recommendable because they're easy to use as many as possible, because they might find and give you an insight of something that you are not aware. But we need to be aware of one thing, that no tool alone can tell us if the site is accessible or not. A knowledgeable judgment can only determine this. Yes.
That brings us to the next layer, which is the interactive layer. So here we are starting to look at how the application is behaving, and we are introducing human judgment. This is also recognized by VCAC 3.0 by introducing the qualitative tests that Mirjana mentioned, and this layer is becoming a mix of qualitative and quantifiable testing. So in testing terms, we are shifting from is it implemented correctly, is it built correctly, to can someone actually use it. And in this layer, we're testing keyboard navigation, focus management, and user flows, and we are answering the questions, can I navigate through? Do I know where I am? And can I complete the task that I want to complete? And again, as testers, we are asking ourselves, how do we do it? How do we test keyboard navigation? And it's really simple. You put the mouse away, you forget about it, you don't use it, you only rely on the keyboard. Let's take a look at how it looks in practice. Yes. So I am entering the code right now, and then I tap, I move to show value, enter, the value is shown, enter again, the value is hidden, tab, I move to submit, enter, the code is submitted. And this was an example that is good index order and good focus, but we also have bad examples that we needed to exclude in order to be good with the time. So if you're interested, please approach us and we will also show you those examples. And if you're unsure or stuck or don't know where to start when you're testing keyboard navigations, there are questions that you can ask yourself, like, is this order logical? Am I moving in a logical order? Can I go back? Can I go forward? If I want to trigger an action, can I actually do it without a mouse? And these are some questions that can really guide you through the process. And why is it important to test these things? First of all, there are users that have motor disabilities, and they rely on these tools to navigate through the experience. And also, there are users that are using screen readers or voice navigation, and actually this is the first step in order to test with the assistive technologies. First, we need to verify that the order is logical, that there is focus, because otherwise the experience will be completely broken. Because if you cannot see something, if you cannot, reach something with a keyboard, for some users, it actually is not going to exist. And if you don't have focus on the element, that means that the user will be lost. And unlike the visual users, they cannot just look around and recover. So trying to simulate these experiences are helping us understand them. So the interactive layer is where accessibility testing becomes real testing, but it still reflects our perspective. To truly understand the users, we need to step into their shoes. And coming into the experiential layer, we're shifting to the user's perspective, and the question becomes, how does it feel like to use these applications and assistive technologies? So by answering these questions, we are trying to enter the user's experience and to use the tools that they use every day. And at this point in our journey, as well as in this presentation, we focused on accessibility in terms of visual and voice interaction. But it's important to mention that there are other needs, like cognitive needs or auditory needs and any other needs that we are not going to cover in detail today. So in this layer, we tried to use screen readers. I think you have heard of them, like VoiceOver, NVDA, JAWS, TalkBack, or any other tools like that. So for me, the first time that I tried to use a screen reader was entering a whole new world, and it was even overwhelming at times. And actually took me completely off guard is that that I'm testing every day, every single day for the 4 years, I didn't recognize it. I didn't know what to do. I was completely lost. And it became clear that this is not just a different way to use the same application, but a completely different experience. Because instead of looking, you're listening, and instead of just visually jumping from one element to the other, you're actually navigating an experience step by step. And at this point, the natural question is, how can I know, as a QA, a non-impaired user, that a screen reader experience is actually good? So what helped me is to, again, ask myself some questions and guide myself through the process. Another thing that you can do is try to close your eyes and then simulate the experience. But I would advise you first to go through the basics and then do the eyes closing, because otherwise you will be completely lost. So the first thing that we do is listen for meaning and asking yourself, do I know what this is? And in this example here, it says show value toggle button. And I know that this is a toggle button that is focused, and it is called show value. The next thing is, okay, I want to interact with it, but how do I do that? And in particular, how do I activate the button? So something like a descriptive text to tell me what I need to do would be helpful to guide me through the process. And here it would say, press on space to show value. And I do that, and then I listen for feedback. Did something happen? Did it actually show the value? Did it not? So in this case, yes, it would announce that the value has been shown, because if something is visually obvious but not announced, that means that the user will not know it. And if you feel confused while using the tool, then definitely the experience is broken, because screen reader users completely rely on what is being said out loud. So by now we have performed all the tests that we mentioned previously, so all the rule-based checks, keyboard navigation, focus management, user flows, we even tried screen readers, and everything looked perfect from a testing perspective. We found bugs along the way, reported, fixed everything, and we felt pretty confident. So do you think that we are finished with testing?
No, of course not quite. Because accessibility is such a huge domain, and there are so many layers and complexities that we cannot cover everything here. And believe me, we have extracted so many things. We wanted to show you how to automate bookmarklets. I'm not sure who you know about those. Do you know about bookmarklets? Okay, then we can chat afterwards. Come to me. We have much more interesting stuff coming up. So we moved forward, and we decided to explore an area which is often overlooked, and this is the voice navigation. So we went curious, and we asked ourselves, what will happen if the user doesn't just listen to the interface, but actually talks back to it?
We tried using voice control, and everything broke. This is what we tried to do.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Enter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Sorry for that.
Aside for it being loud, you can see that nothing actually happened. We didn't understand how to actually enter the value into the field. We tried using the commands like show numbers and show names to try to interact with the screen, but even using those commands was not easy because the code was just not entered into the field. So imagine that you have a permanent or temporary disability, or you're in a situation that you rely on your voice input and you need to perform a payment and you need to log in and you receive the code, but you cannot enter it. And what made it even more surprising is that our previous tests didn't catch this.
And believe me, this was frustrating because we knew that this is working. I mean, it should work. Everything is clean, right? But we just could not use it. And what we realized actually is when the code was unmasked, everything worked fine. Look.
Show value.
Okay.
One-time code. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
See? Everything works fine. But when the code is masked, nothing worked. And this was really frustrating. I mean, how do we make this? How do we type this? Google, search, AI. Luckily, voice assistive tools, some of them give suggestions and alternative commands, which you can use here. And for our case, we needed to use the command show keyboard, which shows a virtual keyboard on the screen. And in order to type the one-time code here, you need to say out loud the numbers that are mapped with the keys from the keyboard. I mean, because the input field is of type password, the code is masked for security reasons, right? So the screen reader will not say it out aloud, and of course the voice navigation tools will not accept dictation directly. So if you think about it, this is a really thoughtful and clever design, secure one, because you're not saying the code out loud, you're not even spelling it, you're just saying a system generated random numbers here, so you're protected. So our realization here was that if the semantic, HTML semantics, is correctly implemented and used, then accessibility is usually largely taken care by the operating system and the assistive tools, and we need to trust them. So this means that we had clean code. Button, we used the native button, toggle button, everything there, the area labels were there here, so we need to trust these tools. Of course, we are testers, so what can we do now? We need to identify all those custom controls, all those scripted UIs, all those specialized UI components, and there we need to assess if they still preserve the expected accessibility behavior that we are expecting there. So we moved on and we explored more about voice navigation, and we realized that voice commands do not work randomly. They are relying on something called accessible name of the element. And this has a rule how to compute it, meaning that if the element has an area label by attribute, HTML, then the value of this attribute is firstly taken as an accessible name. This means that these assistive tools are using this accessible name to identify our elements. And the last one in the hierarchy here is the visible text that the user sees. And there is a VCAG rule labeling name, which says that what the users see on the screen should be the same as what they say. So this means that if the accessible name is exactly the same as what the user sees on the screen, then everything will work predictably and easy, and everything there will be okay.
And by now we finally learned how to use voice navigation. We performed the tests manually and they were good, but we needed to scale them. And we were thinking, how can we adapt our existing Selenium tests to simulate the voice commands that we are using without having to rewrite everything from scratch?
And of course, instead of typing and clicking, we made our tests speak. So we replaced the standard Selenium navigation methods like click and send keys with voice system commands. So to achieve this in Java, we use the process builder class that enables us to execute system operating commands directly. So on macOS, for example, we use the built-in tool that converts text to spoken speech. And this can be done with this say command. So if you type the say command in the terminal, then and add there say hello, for example, you will hear your computer saying hello. Yeah. If you're using mobiles or something, you can create an APK, small APK or IPA for iOS applications, and you can call them, and you can simulate this text-to-speech. So actually, what we did, the best part here, was that the test logic stayed the same, only the interaction of the elements we changed. So we moved from scripted UI interactions into spoken commands. And this is an example of our one-time password object class, specifically the submit button, the method that handles the submit button action. And here, if you see, depending on the interaction mode here, which is a Java system property variable, depending on its value, if it is UI click, we are using the standard Selenium click, but if it is visible UI text, then we are using, of course, this say command, and to this say command, we are giving the accessible name of the submit button, which was computed previously with those rules there. And, of course, everything works fine. But it can be tricky when you compute this accessible name for components which are highly specialized. So there you will need to do some logic. You will need to understand how they're built and build your own logic. If it is clear and clean, then you have the normal rules, and then it's fine. So now the demo. Yes, and now the demo. So first, we are going to run the test with a normal UI click Selenium. Action and navigation, you see, click and everything. Now we are going to change one parameter. And the test will speak.
Start listening. Show value. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Submit. Stop listening.
So these tests actually don't give us the information of just pass and fail. You were on the keynote this morning, right? This pass and fail, the quantum testing, or maybe you were asleep. But anyway, yeah. So these actually tests give us insight of how the behavior is implemented and how it is really acting upon. Because with these tests, you can figure out things like missing focus or some flows that are not smooth or expected as you thought that they are going to be. So in reality, actually, to be honest, Xcore, Wave, all these tools that we have previously mentioned, they are really catching a lot of things. I mean, they are really having a huge coverage with a little effort you can do there. But when you combine them with these kind of tests, then actually you're closer to the real user experience, if you need this. It depends on how complex and what you want to achieve there, but at least it is possible. So this is where actually we moved testing from validation to understanding the real usage there.
Are we finished now?
What do you think? We have a few more minutes, yeah? So we want to give you an example of the qualitative. So you saw the quantifiable, you saw the mixed. Petra showed you all the mixed of quantifiable and qualitative. And now we want to show you a real qualitative example test or situation that we encountered. So for the unmasking and masking the functionality of the code, we used a native button, HTML button element, and we made it a toggle button, like a on-off switch. You showed, Petra already, you showed it in her demo, right? When you click the eye icon here, the code is unmasked. When you click it again, it's masked. This on-off, yes. So, because we add here an area-pressed attribute, we tell the screen reader how to announce the state. And Petra already showed you. Toggle button pressed, toggle button not pressed, right? But now I want to ask you a tricky question. What should the name of this value, of this accessible name, what should the accessible name of this button, toggle button, be? What do you think? Come on, someone. We saw show value, right?
We show eye icon.
Eye icon, but you need to somehow pronounce it, announce it. Well, the point here is that if you ask three different user UX engineers, three different testers, they will all give you different solutions, you are shy, audience, come on. No solution here, but anyway. The point here is that they will give you different solutions, different expectations, different things. For example, in the left side here, or my right, actually, for the screen readers, users, keeping the name, accessibility name show value always the same is acceptable, because for them, the screen reader will say show value, toggle button pressed, OTP code visible, not visible, show button, toggle button not pressed. So this is, for them, understandable. But for the voice navigation users, it can be confusing, because why should someone say show value when their intent is to hide the value, right? So for them, the intuitive solution is to have and switch show value, hide value, right? But then for the screen readers, it will be hide value, toggle button, not pressed. Is it pressed, not pressed? What is happening? It is confusing. So there are trade-offs here, and here, the human experienced judgment is needed here, and experienced users are here to show and to tell us and to explore and to research what is the good and right solution here. So the point here is that accessibility is all about understanding the intent of the users and also the impact, and to anticipate the impact of our decisions, because we need to choose decisions that will be accessible and that will work best for real users in everyday situations. And this is really hard to do, believe me, and even harder to evaluate and test it and verify it if it is correct or not. So,
yes, as Mirjana mentioned, it's really important to actually include experienced accessibility professionals, domain experts, and real users, and they test across different browsers, different operating systems, and they use different assistive technologies, and they can tell us how to actually use these tools and how to actually perform these tests better. To truly build inclusive products, we are combining this professional judgment with the real user experience. And when we test, we are asking ourselves, is it enough and is it inclusive? And we don't know, because it actually depends, because as we saw, accessibility is a balance of trade-offs. And it is perfectly shown in the example that Mirjana mentioned before. So screen readers would need longer, more descriptive labels, and then voice navigation users would need something that is easy to say and quick, and they can just say it and perform the action that they want. And it means that there is not a perfect solution. And we need this judgment of the experienced users to be able to navigate these trade-offs and make decisions that truly matter. And what experiential testing actually taught us is just this, that we cannot find one perfect solution, but we can understand the consequences of each choice and then try to find what works best for real users in real situations. Before we wrap up, I just want you to think about the product that you're working on and try imagining to use it without a mouse, or try to imagine using it with a screen reader or using voice navigation, and just think about how it will be for you, what will be the experience will it break? How will you feel when you use it? Because in the end, you just need to be curious, start small, notice what is difficult, and try to improve it. And by doing that, you make your product and the world just a little more usable and inclusive. Thank you.
Yes. And you can rate our, these were the bloppers, but we are going to skip. You can scan the code in order to rate our talk and give us a feedback so we can improve ourselves.
I do want to make sure you all have time to get to the next session. So we don't really have time for questions, but please do find them. This is an amazing talk. I think all talks should now come with a blooper reel. Thank you. I really loved it.
We can show the blooper, while you're here, Oops.
Yeah. And our last talk of the day is up in the events area. Looking forward to see you all there.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Kade. Click one-time code. 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
So we had a lot of fun actually, really, because it was a fun journey.
It was a journey.
It was a journey, exactly. Maybe not so, always. But think about, if you cannot think about temporary, something that you cannot and you need to do something. So thank you very much for the attention.